Hey everyone, it's Antoinette of Montalvo International. I just wanted to jump on really quickly and share some revelation that the Lord was sharing with me, and it really just centered around obedience. And he was kind of downloading this to me as I was just kind of thinking through and reflecting today, and just recognizing that a lot of times he will call us to be obedient in something, and we may not see the results of that obedience for a long time. And it's not to say that he is trying to withhold information, but a lot of times he wants to, number one, see that we can trust his leading and his direction, but also recognizing that, are we going to put our faith in him or in what we feel, what we see, or what we sense? And he's had me release videos like this before about obedience, but he just really kept highlighting and reemphasizing again today that obedience is better than sacrifice. And our active obedience, especially in the things that he's calling us to, and it's not for you to be so hyper sensitive to every little thing that you feel like you're walking on eggshells, but it does require a level of yieldedness to really hear his voice, to be attentive to him, especially if he's called you to be a mouthpiece for him in any way, shape, or form. Your obedience in what you say, what you do, what he asks you to do in an assignment, a task, someone he asks you to speak to, pray about, or whatever it is, that obedience determines a lot. And he started just kind of bringing to my mind just all of the different prophets that were prophesying Jesus is coming. And those prophets had to be obedient even in the most ridiculous situations. You know, I think about Jeremiah. Jeremiah was like in a prison half the time, I think, when he was prophesying things, but it did not stop him from speaking what God was saying. You know, he was still moving about, doing things. There's even a portion where he was like buying land and trading and selling while he's in prison, And many other of the prophets, they had to go through very crazy things, but yet they stayed true to what God was telling them to do. Imagine if they were like, well, I don't see it. It doesn't match up. Why am I going to even say anything? Like, what's the point? But they knew what God was telling them and they were yielded to it, and their obedience was better than sacrifice. And of course, we know that verse comes from Samuel when he was speaking to Saul, and Saul was, being instructed by Samuel to wait for him before he did a certain thing, and Saul getting antsy because it seemed like Samuel was outside of the time that Saul was expecting him, that Saul was like, well, I just got to take matters into my own hands. Things are chaotic. Stuff is not matching up. Samuel's not here. He said he'd be here in 7 days, and 7 days have gone and passed, and I don't have the thing, and he's not here. So I just got to do what I need to do. And it was in that moment that Samuel was like, why did you go outside of what you were supposed to do? Obedience is better than sacrifice. And there were multiple times where Saul had that happening, where, Saul was supposed to wipe out an entire nation and he left, the king, or he left the whatever, and his obedience created a hindrance. It created a problem. And there's even kind of this historical crossover that I think God has probably had me highlight before, but just worth mentioning again, how, for example, there was a major enemy to the children of Israel, the Amalekites, I believe it was, that all throughout various generations, you can trace it back to Moses when the children of Israel are being defeated. You can trace it to Saul, that when they were not addressed according to how God wanted them to be addressed and how the children of Israel is supposed to confront them, those same enemies rose up in different ways, and they shouldn't have risen up in the way that they did. So, for example, the Amalekites that Saul was supposed to completely take out, that he didn't, they surface as enemies in the book of Esther. That was where the line that Haman came from, who was set to attack the Jewish people at that time. And so that failure to act in obedience cost things later in generations. And it's not to say that God's grace isn't there. It's not to say that he doesn't help us in our time of need. It doesn't mean that he's, like a strict taskmaster that's like whipping us if we don't do certain things right. Thankfully, Jesus has paid it all and he gives us that grace in it. But when we willingly disobey, when we willingly don't do what he's telling us to do, even if we don't have all the pictures, all the information, all the pieces of the puzzle, that's when it becomes null and void. That's when it becomes disobedience to what God is saying to do. And so the Lord was just kind of having me reflect today of just different things that he's asked us to do, major things in our life, major things that he's asked us to do that, maybe you're the one pioneering a situation. Maybe you're doing something for the first time that's never been done in your family, and you don't have all the details. Like, you may be like Abraham, where God said, go from this place, and that's all you have. You have no other details. You're like, just go. And you just have to go. And you're like, Lord, show me where I need to go. as I go. And it's the same way, like when you're pioneering something, you don't know the impact that it's going to have later on. Abraham became the father of many nations. Did he see all of the people? Did he see all the children? Did he have more than one child from the promise of Sarah and him having a child? He had just Isaac. But he trusted God. He's attributed as the father of faith because he put his full obedience in God to say, this is what you're calling of me. This is what you desire of me. This is what I should keep my eyes on you in this. And my obedience to believe your word is better than sacrifice and saying, I'm just not going to believe you. And, me and Sarah will be fine and we'll be good to go. And yes, did Abraham make some mistakes? Yes, he was Abram at that time, and she was Sarai. And the Lord even changed their name to give them a fresh start. But in the same way, when we accept Jesus, our names are changed and we get a fresh start. When we repent of the ways that we weren't obedient to things, we get a fresh start. We get a fresh start. But it's really just understanding that if God is calling you to do something, regardless of the pushback, the resistance, the sense that it does not make, the things that don't seem to add up, obedience is still better than sacrifice. You can sacrifice all kinds of things to God. 1 Corinthians 13 says that you can do all these different things, but if you don't have love, it means nothing. And in the same way, our obedience to God is a form of that love. You can do all kinds of things. You can give to the poor, you can prophesy, you can do XYZ thing, but if you don't have love, it does not equate to what God wants. That's what 1 Corinthians 13 says. And God is love. And a way to demonstrate our love for him is through obeying what he's saying to do, obeying his word, obeying his instructions. And so you can do things, say things, proclaim things all day long, but if it's not according to his will, then it is nothing. It is nothing. It's just noise. And so it's not to say that God doesn't want prophecy. It is not to say that he doesn't want us to help people and those types of things. But most importantly, what he wants is our obedience, and he wants our willing obedience. That's why he's given us free will. That's why he doesn't intervene in every little thing at every given point, because he wants to say, he wants to see, will my children obey me? Will they obey me? Even as a parent, you want to come to a point where your children just obey what you tell them to do, not because you're constantly ragging them or constantly pulling them or constantly telling them, do this, do this, do this, do this. When you see your child, for those who have children, nieces, nephews, if you're a school teacher and your children follow what they're supposed to follow according to the rules you have set for them, not because you're trying to make life terrible for them, but you want them to be safe and you want them to have the best that they're supposed to have. When you see them willingly do what you're asking them to do, it brings a level of excitement and just love, even more love. Not to say that God's love is limited, but it moves God's heart when we are obedient to him. And again, as I said in a video recently, he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. Sorry, that wasn't the verse, but I keep wanting to say that verse, but I'm going to use that verse instead. He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him. But there is great reward. That's what it is. There is great reward when we don't cast away our confidence. I keep wanting to say that one, but I'm going to say it then. Number one, don't cast away your confidence, because he is a rewarder of that. He rewards. There's great reward in the confidence that you keep in God and the obedience that you keep in God and the trust and faith that you have in God. But also he is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, meaning you're seeking his will, seeking his way, seeking his direction, moving the way he says to move, and expecting him to make it all right at the end. Because again, it may be years before you see your one act of obedience, what that one act of obedience has done. It may be years. You may be standing for a family member. You may have shared the love of Jesus with them, and they may look at you like you're crazy. They may look at you like, what are you talking about? But that one act of obedience could be the very act of obedience that saves their souls in the future. So obedience is better than sacrifice. Don't sacrifice what God is asking you to do. Don't do the things thinking that you have to just go through, the motions to please God. But instead, hear his voice and say, Lord, what is it that you want me to do? What would you have of me at this point? And just let him lead you and guide you, and know that there is a reward for your obedience in him. Be blessed, be encouraged. Obedience is better than sacrifice, in Jesus' name.